You are surrounded. Step out with your hands where we can see them. The words blasted through a megaphone, jolting me awake as I stood barefoot on my front porch, clutching a steaming mug of morning coffee, dressed only in boxers. My eyes squinted hard against the rising sun, struggling to make sense of the chaos unfolding. Four sheriff deputies were crouched behind their squad cars, weapons drawn, parked at the front gate of my ranch. I stood frozen, coffee sloshing in my hand. "Is this a joke?" I muttered aloud. "Now, sir," the voice crackled again, "come down the steps slowly." But here's the wild twist that turned this surreal moment upside down. I don't even live in an HOA. I'd spent months double-checking that fact when I bought this 18-acre ranch, deliberately dodging nosy neighbors and any HOA board that might dictate my fence style or ban my red barn. So why on earth were the cops here? That's when I spotted her, looming behind the deputies, a tall woman in a green blouse, arms crossed with a smug grin, perched beside a white golf cart, her laminated HOA badge glinting on her collar. Her name? Tammy Grayson, the same HOA president from the neighborhood across the hill, whose boundary stops 2 full blocks short of my property. She'd called the cops, and I was about to discover just how far she'd go to turn my peaceful life into a nightmare. Before I could ask a thing or even grab some pants, 3 officers stormed through my gate. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a mix-up, this was war. Let me backtrack and tell you how we landed here. I'm Kyle Bennett, 39, a former construction engineer turned ranch owner after selling my design firm last year. I craved peace, open skies, fresh eggs, and a haven to raise my 2 Labrador retrievers, Scout and Duke, far from the hum of leaf blowers or meddling busybodies. Which city of the United States are you watching from? Drop a comment and share. With us, if you have any confrontation with the HOA, we will narrate your story on our channel. Surely, complaints about grass height violations. After searching for months, I finally found this place, a small ranch tucked beyond the edge of Hawthorne Ridge, a high-end development with a notoriously aggressive HOA board. Their official line was that I was on the fringe of their community map, but legally my ranch wasn't part of the HOA. My deed even had a waiver attached, non-HOA registered property. I hired a lawyer to confirm it twice. Before I bought the place, the first few weeks were heaven. I set up my tool, shed-built a chicken coop from scratch, planted a small garden, and installed solar panels on the barn roof. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Then came the drones at first. I thought it was just some tech-loving kid playing around, but when I noticed the same white quadcopter hovering at 7:05 a.m. 3 days in a row, I started to get suspicious. I shot it down with a BB gun on day 4. That same afternoon, I got a knock on the door. It was Tammy Grayson, blonde, bob clipboard in hand, smile like a wolf in pearls. "You must be the new neighbor," she said. I nodded. "Kyle, nice to meet you." She didn't shake my hand. "We've had several complaints about noise and unauthorized structures on HOA-managed land." I blinked. "I'm not part of the HOA," she smiled wider. "That's what your realtor told you, I'm sure." "I had it legally verified. My lawyer, I'm sure we can work something out," she interrupted. "We're all part of a community here." I've brought a welcome package. Inside was a list of violations: noise non-approved, building materials improper, fencing even, a notice about livestock exceeding residential tolerance. "I have 3 chickens," I said, "and a rooster." We heard it. That was my first encounter with Tammy. I didn't respond to the letter. I didn't attend the mandatory orientation she scheduled the next week. And I didn't sign anything she left in my mailbox. I thought that would be the end of it. But I underestimated just how bored, petty, and powerful some HOA presidents can be. She escalated quickly over the next few weeks. I got everything From fake landscaping fines to supposed public nuisance violations for leaving my porch light on all night. My mail started arriving. Late packages mysteriously went missing one morning. I found my garden, trampled footprints led from the road straight. Through my carrots I installed cameras. That's how I caught her golf cart parked on the side of the hill at 321A.
I filed a report. The sheriff said it was probably a mistake he knew. Tammy said she was a little passionate but harmless. That was the low point feeling. Like no one would believe me. I wasn't part of their system. I was the outsider. But then came
the bounce back. I contacted my lawyer again, Joseph Stein, a quiet but brilliant man from Austin with a fierce reputation in property law. He reviewed everything, cross-checked the development plan and smiled. She doesn't have a legal leg to stand on, he said, but if she's using HOA resources to harass you, we can go after her. We began documenting everything. I built a secure fence, 10 FT tall, with legal-grade signage and motion lights. I posted private property non-HOE at every entry point. I even put in a dedicated mailbox with a security lock. And I waited. That's when Tammy made her boldest move. She filed a formal complaint with the county accusing me of erecting commercial structures on regulated residential land. Her claim was that my solar panels and new chicken coop were in violation of HOA aesthetic standards. Even though I was clearly not part of the HOA, the county launched an investigation. Then the sheriff showed up with a courtesy notice. That's how we got to the moment where I stood barefoot in front of 4 squad cars looking at deputies with weapons drawn, while Tammy smiled in the background like she was watching her favorite soap opera. And just when I thought it couldn't get worse, sir, we've received reports that you've been storing illegal equipment in your outbuilding. One of the officers said. My head tilted. What kind of equipment? Explosives? I nearly dropped my coffee. That's when I knew she had crossed a line, because in my locked shed, behind a double layer of padlocks and fingerprint entry, I kept nothing but an old chainsaw, a lawnmower, and some propane tanks for the grill. Nothing illegal, nothing suspicious, and no one should have known what was inside that shed unless they had been on my property or had help from someone who'd broken in. I stared at the deputy. You're going to want to check the shed yourself, I said calmly. He hesitated. You're not resisting. Nope, but when this is over, someone's getting sued. Tammy's smile twitched. And that's when Scout, my younger Labrador, began barking like crazy behind the fence. He never barks unless something's really wrong. I turned to see what he was looking at and froze behind the barn. Something was smoking, a thin trail of dark grey, rising up into the morning sky. My heart stopped. Duke was tied up back there, and so was the fuel tank for the generator. I dropped the coffee and bolted. What happened next would change everything. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments below, and stay tuned because things are about to get much, much crazier. I sprinted around the barn, barefoot, my feet crunching through gravel and straw, my lungs on fire. Smoke was curling up into the sky, not thick yet, but enough to set off every alarm in my head. Duke, I shouted. I heard a low whimper in return. Then I saw him tied to the water spigot, post, his leash tangled around the base, yanking with all his might. Terrified, just 10F'd from him. The backup generator sat smouldering. A greasy black cloth hung halfway out of the fuel vent like it had been stuffed in. Hastily, my heart dropped. Someone had tried to light it, and Duke had been inches from going up in flames. I dashed forward, untied him, and grabbed the nearest bucket. Thank God the rain barrel beside the barn was full. I doused the generator in the rag, coughing through the smoke until the hissing steam faded. I pulled Duke close, burying my face in his fur. He was trembling. That wasn't an accident. Someone had tried to set my generator on fire on purpose while my dog was right there. By the time I came back around to the front of the house, holding Duke by the collar, the deputies had lowered their weapons. One of them was talking into a radio, eyes wide. Another had just emerged from the shed. He looked confused. "There's nothing in there," he said, "just tools. I didn't say I told you." So I looked at Tammy instead. She wasn't smiling anymore. "Is this how you treat people who aren't in your club?" I asked her by calling in fake tips, tampering with property, and almost killing someone's dog. Tammy didn't answer. The lead deputy walked over. His tone was softer now, less aggressive. "So we may need you to file a formal statement. This is starting to look like it might be criminal mischief. You think they let me go back inside and put on proper clothes while a fire investigator looked at the smouldering generator?" I called my lawyer again and gave him everything. Photos, names, badge numbers. He said not to say another word until he got there. The next few hours were a whirlwind. A local fire marshal showed up. Then a second sheriff vehicle. A neighbor wandered over, drawn by the sirens. Tammy stood off to the side, arms crossed, muttering something about community standards and non-compliance, but no one was listening to her now. I watched from the porch, arms crossed, as the scene unfolded like a courtroom drama. One of the deputies turned toward her and asked, "Ma'am, can you explain how you came to suspect illegal equipment on his property?" Her response was a weak shrug. "We've received anonymous complaints, several of them," he raised a brow. "From who I can't say because they don't exist," I said. From the porch silence that was the first real low of the story, the realization that someone had actively tried to frame me and nearly burned my ranch down, not with a lawsuit, not with red tape, but fire. They had crossed into criminal territory, and that meant I could fight back, not just with lawyers, but legally with force. 2 days passed. The investigation continued. Deputies came back to photograph the barn and question me. Again, they took Duke to the vet and noted his burns. Thankfully, minor, but still painful. Scout never left his side. The low buzz of danger never left the air. I barely slept. I added more cameras, 7 in total, each connected to a backup cloud. I posted legal warning signs in both English and Spanish. I bought new locks. I reinforced the gate. And then I waited that Friday night. My lawyer, Joseph, came down from Austin. He walked the land with me, nodding silently, making notes. "Tammy's HOA has crossed about 5 lines," he said finally. "Trespassing, false reports, attempted
arson, possibly conspiracy." I blinked. "What do we do?" He smiled. "We hit them back. But not just with a lawsuit. We go to the county board and file a motion to terminate her HOA license strip. Her authority. We'll ask for a cease and desist against her. And the board members, and we'll go public. You've documented everything. Let's make it known public. How we'll start with the local press." That same weekend, Joseph drafted up a detailed press release, photos of the burn marks near the generator, copies of the false complaint letters, even a screenshot of a text message I'd received a week before that now made more sense. "You're not special just because you have land, follow the rules, or we'll make you." It had been anonymous, but now I had a pretty
good idea where it came from. Joseph pitched the story to the Hawthorne Tribune, a local weekly that loved drama, especially HOA drama. By Monday, the front page read, "Man accused by HOA president, but he's not even in the HOA." My inbox exploded. Some emails were supportive, some were angry. A few came from other people who had also been targeted by Tammy. In the past, turns out I wasn't the only one. The highs were starting to roll in on Wednesday. A reporter from the Austin American Statesman called me for a longer interview. On Thursday, the sheriff's office confirmed they were formally reviewing the misconduct reports tied to Tammy and her board, and by Friday morning, Tammy showed up again, but this time she didn't bring a clipboard. She brought a lawyer. They parked outside the gate and waited. I didn't go out. I let the cameras roll and called Joseph, who was already en route from the porch. I could see Tammy pacing, her face flushed with frustration. Her lawyer looked less confident than she did. They were here to negotiate, but I had no intention of backing down because just the night before my camera had caught something else, a man in a dark hoodie sneaking up my drive at 342A.
He didn't get far. The new motion lights turned on and Scout barked him off, but the footage was clear. He wasn't just a prowler, he had something in his hand. It looked like a can of gasoline. I saved the footage and sent it straight to the sheriff.
And I had a hunch Tammy hadn't just called the cops. She may have sent someone far more dangerous now, with her lawyer by her side. Standing silently outside my gate, I knew the next move would change everything. That's when Joseph pulled up and stepped out of his SUV suit jacket slung over his shoulder. Calm, confident, he looked at Tammy, then at her lawyer, and simply said, "You need to leave. My client is pressing charges."
Tammy's eyes twitched. "You don't know who you're messing with," she hissed. Joseph didn't flinch. "Mom, neither do you." The lawyer tried to speak, but Joseph cut him off. "We have evidence. We have police reports. We have a pending arson investigation. I suggest you prepare for court." Then he handed them an envelope, a cease and desist as they turned to leave. Tammy shot me a glare that could burn through steel, but for the first time she looked nervous. She knew this wasn't over, and neither did it.
Because that night, just as I was locking up the barn, I found something sitting on my porch. It was a small, black box, no return address. I picked it up. Slowly, heart-pounding inside was a single note. "You should have stayed quiet. I didn't sleep." That night, the black box sat on the kitchen table like it was breathing. I couldn't take my eyes off it, even after I'd read the note at least 20 times. You should have stayed quiet. Who would leave that Tammy? Someone on her HOA board or someone else entirely? The box was light, no ticking, no wires, no smell, just cardboard. But the message, that message was heavy. I called Joseph immediately. He picked up on the second ring. "I need you back here," I told him. Now 20 minutes later, he was standing in my kitchen in jeans and a hoodie, pulling on gloves and carefully lifting the box open. What we found inside made my stomach turn. A dead bird, a small sparrow neck, twisted dried blood around its beak, and beneath it, a photograph. It was an aerial shot of my ranch, zoomed in, close, dated 2 nights ago. Someone had flown a drone over my land again after the incident, after the investigation, after the cease and desist. This wasn't just harassment anymore. This was a threat. This is no longer HOA.
"Drama," Joseph said grimly. "This is criminal stalking, and we have to assume whoever left this did it while you were asleep." Scout and Duke started barking again. Just then I checked the front camera. Nothing, but I couldn't ignore that tight feeling.
Crawling up my spine, someone had been on my porch again. The lowest moment hit me around 4 p.m. after Joseph left, and I was alone in the house, flashlight in one hand, shotgun in the other. I sat in the dark living room. The dogs curled beside me, listening to the creaks and groans of the old ranch house and wondering if I was safe anymore. I had come here for peace, for quiet, for solitude. Now I had a stalker, a psychotic HOA president, and a half-burned generator. And worst of all, no one had been arrested yet. But the next morning, something changed. I got a call from Deputy Ramirez 1. Of the officers who'd responded during the shed incident, Kyle, he said, "We may have something, can you come down to the station?" I did, and what they showed me nearly knocked the wind out of me. Remember the camera footage I had sent them of? The man in the hoodie sneaking up my drive, well, they ran the plates on a vehicle that had been caught on a different angle. An older black SUV parked a few lots down the road. Barely visible behind a row of bushes, it was registered to a man named
Alan Hennon. Sound familiar? He was Tammy Grayson's cousin and former HOA board member. He had been removed from the board 2 years ago for using HOA funds for a security project that didn't exist. Now, he was showing up at my ranch in the dead of night with what looked like gasoline and a clear goal to scare me into silence. That was the first high of this chapter. The sheriff's department had a name, a vehicle, a connection, but still no arrest. Yet they said they needed more. So Joseph and
I decided to push the story even further. We reached out to an HOA watchdog YouTube channel based in Texas, known for exposing abusive HOA boards. The host, a guy named Brandon Cole, loved the story. He asked for an exclusive interview. We filmed it. 2 days later, right from my porch, Scout and Duke sat at my feet the whole time. We showed the drone photo, the dead bird, the burn marks by the generator, the cease and desist, the police report. Brandon posted the video that night with the title, HOA, sends cops to man's ranch, but he's not in the HOA. It went viral. Thousands of views in hours. Comments poured in. Former HOA members from all over the country shared their own stories. Some even mentioned Tammy by name. Turns out she had a long history of expanding her boundaries. Tammy once fined a neighbor for parking a tractor on visible land. That neighbor lived 2 mi away, also outside the HOA. She had built a private gate across a county road entrance and tried to enforce HOA rules on anyone who passed through, even delivery drivers. She had even sued a woman for painting her mailbox blue. That woman was a widow and lived alone. It was a pattern, and now it was unraveling. That weekend, 2 other ranch owners from the area came forward and filed their own complaints. One of them, a guy named Rick Thomas, told me Tammy had threatened to call CPS because his kids were playing too loudly near the shared trail behind his land. Rick showed me a letter she had slipped into his mailbox, demanding he re-educate his children about noise pollution. You can't make this stuff up. The sheriff's office began to take it seriously. Then came the fire marshal's final report on my generator, deliberate tampering, possible attempt at ignition.
unknown accelerant detected. That's when I got another knock on the door, but this time it wasn't Tammy. It was a young woman, early 30s, denim jacket, nervous hands. "Hi," she said, "my name's Lisa. I used to work with Tammy on the board. I saw your story online. I think I have something you should see." I let her in. Lisa sat at my kitchen table and pulled out a flash drive. She made us all sign NDAs. She said, "But honestly, I don't care anymore. I was on the board for 8 months. She keeps files on people." She talks about taking down outsiders, and she knew you weren't part of the HOA. She told us you were a threat. What's on the drive? I asked emails, surveillance logs, pictures from drones, notes about how to file complaints. She even has templates like automated violation letters, and she keeps a list. She calls it the non-compliant file. Your name's on it with photos. I sat back, stunned. Lisa continued, "And the man who visited your ranch, Alan Hennon, she calls him her cleanup guy. I think she sent him to scare you." I stared at the drive in her hand like it was gold, because this was the nail in the coffin. I thanked her, called Joseph, and uploaded everything to an encrypted drive for the sheriff and the county prosecutor. They said they'd need time to verify everything.
but it looked promising. Tammy was about to be held accountable, but just when I thought the storm was breaking, Lisa's eyes went wide as she looked out the window. I turned to follow her gaze. A black SUV was parked. Across the road, engine running, someone sat behind the wheel, wearing sunglasses and staring straight at the house. Lisa's face drained of color. "That's him," she whispered. "That's Alan." I stood up slowly, and the SUV pulled off, tires kicking gravel, speeding. Away down the road, I didn't chase him. I just turned to Lisa and said, "It's time to bring the fight to them." Because now I had evidence, I had names, and I had the internet. But what I didn't know, what none of us knew yet, was that Tammy wasn't done, not by a long shot, because the next morning, when I went to feed the chickens, the coop door was wide open, and every single bird was gone. The chicken coop was empty. Not one feather left, no eggs, no feed. Scattered around like usual, just silence in the wind, brushing across the wire fencing. It was as if someone had come in, opened the gate, and swept them. Away in the dead of night, I stood there in my boots, hands on my hips, heart pounding like a jackhammer. That was 12 birds gone, 2 roosters, 10 hens. They weren't just livestock. They were part of my rhythm, my morning routine, my peace. And now gone. Duke sniffed the coop and growled. Low-pacing Scout stood near the edge of the fencing, ears perked and body tense. Whoever had done this hadn't just taken chickens. They'd sent a message. I opened the gate slowly and stepped inside the enclosure. There were faint boot prints in the soil near the feed bins. Fresh, big, 2 sets. One of them had a drag mark, like they were pulling a crate or bag. I snapped photos of everything and called the sheriff again. They promised to send someone out that
afternoon, but I already knew what they were going to say. No cameras caught the theft. No neighbors saw anything. No one heard a thing. And the worst part, there wouldn't be any arrests, not yet. So instead of waiting, I made a decision. I was done reacting.
Now I was going on offense. That same day, Joseph and I filed a civil suit against Tammy Grayson, the Hawthorne Ridge, HOA, and Alan Henson. We claimed harassment, trespassing, attempted arson, stalking, and destruction of property. Lisa, the whistleblower, had agreed to testify. She gave a full statement to the sheriff and forwarded every file from Tammy's non-compliant archive to the county prosecutor. But we didn't stop there. Joseph also filed for an emergency restraining order against Tammy and Alan, effective immediately. That meant they couldn't come within 300 FT of me, my home, my land, or my animals. And still Tammy tried to fight back. That weekend, I received a formal letter from the HOA delivered by courier. It claimed I was now under investigation for endangering the welfare of community members and creating a hostile environment for local board officials. Let me repeat that they accused me of endangering them. The level of gaslighting would have been laughable if it wasn't.
Terrifying. So I responded the only way I knew, how I called Brandon Cole, the YouTuber. We filmed another video that night. This time, I read the letter aloud on camera, then I walked viewers through the chicken coop, empty doors, swinging in the breeze.
I showed them the boot prints. I showed them the drone photo, the dead bird, the letter in the black box. Everything. The video went live under the title HA Escalates. They stole my chickens. After I exposed them, it exploded online by the next morning. It had 500,000 views. People were outraged. The comment section was full of support. That's not an HOA, that's a cartel. She needs to be arrested. Like yesterday, I live near Hawthorne Ridge. This doesn't surprise me one bit. Even local news stations began picking it up. That Monday, I got a call from a reporter at Cakes Austin, "Mr. Bennett, we'd like to do a live interview. Can we come to your ranch?" I agreed. And when they arrived, reporter, cameraman, truck, and all they caught something unexpected. Tammy was parked down the road again, watching. The moment the news crew turned their camera in her direction, she peeled off like a bat out of hell, tires squealing clouds of dust behind her. It was over for her now, at least. That's what I thought, until the next extreme thing happened. Tuesday morning, I got a phone call from Rick Thomas, the other rancher, who had filed a complaint. "Kyle," he said, panic in his voice. "You need to check your boundaries. What happened?" "My wife just found something by our fence, a box like yours, same handwriting." My stomach dropped. "They left you one too?" "Yeah, and inside." He paused. "They put a photo of your house. I was speechless. They're threatening you on my property." I finally said, "Looks like it." Rick sent me a picture of the note. It read, "You're next if you keep helping him." That was the turning point, because now Tammy's campaign wasn't just about me. She was trying to silence anyone who stood up to her. This wasn't just personal. It was strategic, deliberate, almost organized. I shared the news with Joseph and the sheriff. Immediately, Deputy Ramirez escalated the case to a county task force. They suspected that Tammy may have been using HOA funds to pay Alan and possibly others to carry out these intimidation tactics. The forensic audit had begun, and now that Rick had been threatened too, we had grounds for a class action lawsuit. That night, I had cameras set at every corner of the ranch, floodlights on full power motion, sensors wired directly to my phone. I even installed a trail cam near the back fence line where the coop had been raided, and I didn't sleep again. I sat on the porch, shotgun in my lap, dogs beside me, waiting, listening. Just before dawn, I heard it, a soft, distant buzzing in the sky. I looked up and spotted it, another drone silently hovering above the barn, same white quadcopter, same slow rotation, but this time I was ready. I grabbed the signal jammer Joseph had given me, a legal one meant for private property protection. I aimed it up and flipped the switch. The drone twitched, staggered, and then fell like a rock, crashing into the field behind my barn with a crunch. I jogged out and found it smashed into 3 pieces, but the SD card was still intact. I handed it off to the sheriff's office that morning, and what they recovered stunned even the most seasoned investigators. Tammy had flown multiple drones over my land. They had time-stamped footage, audio recordings, even private footage of my guest house windows, clearly illegal surveillance. This wasn't HOA work, this was espionage. Deputy Ramirez called me later that,
"Afternoon, Kyle," he said. "The county's issuing a search warrant. We're raiding her office tomorrow." I exhaled for the first time in days. I had hoped we'd get here, but never thought it would happen so fast. I stood in the middle of my field, watching
the sky, wondering if Tammy knew what was coming, wondering if she'd finally give up. But I should have known better, because later that night, my gate was left open, and someone broke into the barn. They didn't steal anything. They left something instead. A single photo taped to the inside of the door. It was me, asleep on the porch, taken from less than 10 ft away. I stared at the photo for a long time. There I was, slumped in my porch chair, shotgun across my lap, one hand draped over Duke's back. The photo had been taken from so close I could see the reflection of the porch light in my coffee mug, and I had no idea someone was there. That meant whoever took it had stepped onto my porch, walked past my cameras, past the motion lights, past my dogs. The barn door creaked slightly behind me from the wind, but it sounded a lot like someone breathing. I took the photo down and turned it over. Nothing. Written on the back this time, just the image. A warning, a message. You're not safe, even when you think you are. I didn't panic. I got angry. and I went straight inside, called Joseph, and told him what I'd found. We're past lawsuits. I said, Tammy's people crossed into full criminal territory. Joseph didn't argue. I already spoke to the county prosecutor. The raid on Tammy's office is approved 6 Koilang. M sharp. I'll text you when it starts. I didn't sleep. I just waited at 5:58 a.m. The next morning, Joseph texted one word. It's on by 6:05. I was watching live footage streamed from a news chopper circling above Hawthorne Ridges, HOA headquarters county. Deputies in windbreakers and tactical gear moved in as if they were serving a warrant on a gang hideout. And in a way they were by 6:15. Tammy was in handcuffs. Her pearl necklace was crooked. Her shoes didn't match. And for once, she didn't look smug. The raid uncovered everything. The drones, the burner phones, the non-compliance database. Lisa had warned us about dozens of names, addresses, photographs, notes, maps, schedules. Even HOA funds had been misappropriated. Tammy had set up a community surveillance initiative that never actually existed on paper, but she funneled thousands into a private account to pay consultants. One of those consultants, Alan Henson, another, an unnamed third-party firm that had ties to a private security company out of Houston. Turns out Tammy had hired people to do her dirty work under the guise of neighborhood safety enforcement. The moment the story broke, it went national. CNN ran it with the headline, HOA President Arrested in Vigilante Surveillance Scandal Targeted. Non-members in ranch dispute. Local papers had a field day. The Tribune ran with, from fines to felonies, how one HOA president declared war on a neighbor. My phone blew up. People from across the country reached out with similar horror stories. Some were from that same HOA, others from states away. But here's the thing. Even though Tammy had been arrested, Alan was still missing, and I still didn't know how someone had managed to sneak onto my porch, past all my systems, and take that photo of me sleeping till the sheriff called that night. We got the phone records, Ramirez said. Alan's phone pinged at 3:13 just outside your ranch boundary the night before last, that matched the time of the photo. He'd been there watching me, possibly inside the gate, and I hadn't even noticed I installed a new layer of infrared motion sensors. The next day, I was done. Playing defense, I wanted alerts. The second someone crossed onto my land the next few days brought a rare moment of peace. Tammy remained in custody awaiting trial. The HOA board disbanded pending investigation. The chickens never came back, but I got a letter from a local farmer who'd seen the story and offered to donate a new flock free of charge in honor of standing your ground. It felt like things were finally turning around until Chapter 5's next extreme twist landed in my mailbox. Literally a plain white envelope, no return address. Inside a single page, printed in block font. You're not finished. You're just first. There was no signature, no logo, but a second sheet slipped behind it had a map. Hand-drawn, it marked out 5 properties. Near mine ranches, isolated homes all outside the HOA, and a big red X was drawn over mine. This wasn't just about Tammy anymore. There were others involved, and they were still out there. I sat back at the kitchen table, the map spread in front of me, dogs at my feet, and realized something terrifying. Tammy may have been the queen on the board, but someone else was moving the pieces, and I was still in the game. The red X on my ranch wasn't the only one. There were 4 others, each marked with a thin black number 1, 2, 3, 4. Mine was number 5. They were all outside the HOA's official boundary lines, just like me. I stared at the map for hours, cross-referencing it with Google Earth and county land records, and sure enough, they all checked. Out standalone properties, mostly ranches or farmland, not connected to any HOA, just like mine. So why were they on this map? And more importantly, what had already happened to the other 4? I decided to find out the next morning. I packed a small bag flashlight, phone charger, bottled water notepad, and a printed copy of the map Joseph called while I was gassing up the truck. "You sure this is safe?" he asked. "You don't even know who drew that map." "I don't, but I need answers. I've spent too long sitting and reacting. I want to know who else has been through this." He sighed. "Okay, just keep your GPS on and text me the moment anything feels off." I promised I would scout road shotgun. Duke stayed, behind with my neighbor Rick, for safety. It was a long drive past Hawthorne Ridge, then even further through winding back roads and patches of undeveloped land. The first property on the map was labeled Number 1, a 12-acre goat farm owned by an older man named Calvin Brooks, located just outside the abandoned Mill Creek estate. When I pulled up to the gate, I knew something was wrong. The fence was busted in 2 places. The weeds were overgrown, no goats in sight. I climbed out of the truck and called out, "Hello, Mr. Brooks?" No answer. I walked up to the gate and saw a crudely stapled notice pinned to the wooden post foreclosure, "Ordered sale." Dated 3 months ago. I tried peering into the window of the main house, but it was empty. No furniture, just dust it looked like. Someone had been forced out in a hurry. I checked the mailbox on a hunch, empty, but the name on the side confirmed it. C. Brooks, another rancher, another outsider, and now gone. I stood there for a minute longer, scanning the yard, the barn, the tree line. Then I saw it etched into the bark of a tree at the edge of the property line. By rewind, they took everything. Goosebumps ran down my arms. I snapped a photo and left the second house. Dumber 2 on the map was still standing. This one belonged to
a woman named Natalie Hart, who lived alone with her horses and ran a small animal rescue. I found her sitting on the porch with a mug of coffee and a pistol on her lap. She didn't point it at me, but she didn't lower it either. "You, Kyle Bennett?" she asked. "Yes, Mum, I saw your video." She looked around nervously, then motioned for me to sit down. "I've been waiting for someone else to come forward," she said. "I didn't know it would be you." I explained the map. The X is the note that said, "I was just." First, her eyes darkened. "They came for me last year," she said. "Same tricks, HOA violations, even though I'm not in the HOA, then drone flyovers, then threats. They said I was driving down property values." "Who's they?" I asked. "I don't know all their names. Tammy Allen, maybe more. I think some of them are tied to a private firm, kind of like community enforcers. They target people who buy near the HOA but don't join it." I leaned in. Why they want control. They hate when someone owns land and doesn't follow their little rule book. And if they can't force you in, they'll force you out her hands. Trembled. "They poisoned 2 of my horses," she whispered. Froze. "What, last November, vet?" Confirmed. "It traces of anti-rees in the water trough?" "I had cameras, but..." "Someone disabled them. Did you report it?" She gave a hollow laugh. "Yeah, and the sheriff said it must have been an accident. No arrests, no investigation. Sound familiar?" It did. I sat with her for a while just listening. She had been through everything. I had, and worse. But she'd been too scared to go public. "Until now, I'll testify," she said. Finally, if it helps you or anyone else, I thanked her, gave her Joseph's number, promised she wouldn't be alone anymore. And then I drove to the next mark number. 3 was abandoned, a collapsed barn, a trailer home with busted windows, burn marks along the roofline. It looked like a fire had started near the kitchen. No signs of life, just silence county records showed. It had once belonged to a man named Davis Earl. No phone number listed, no next of kin, just a red, vacated stamp on the deed. I didn't stay long. Something about that property felt heavy, like whatever had happened there, no one had ever come back to clean it up.
By the time I reached number 4, the sun was low in the sky, the last X before mine. The address led me to a small cottage tucked inside a pine grove. There were kids, toys in the yard, a wind chime on the porch, and a woman in her early 40s gardening by the fence. She stood up when she saw me. Her name was Vanessa Keene. She already knew why I was there. I got one of those black boxes too. She said 3 months ago, after I refused to sell, I raised an eyebrow. Sell? To who? Tammy's group. They sent some guy with a clipboard, said they were expanding the community buffer zone, offered to buy me out. I said no. And then the power outages started. Then the code violations, then the drone, then the fire. I followed her around the back. Her garage was blackened from where someone had set it ablaze. Thankfully, it hadn't spread to the main house. She looked me in the eye and said, I thought I was crazy. I thought maybe I had left something plugged in, but now I know it was them. I shared everything with her about Lisa, about Alan, about Tammy's arrest. She nodded. You think it's over? She asked. I thought it was, but now I'm not so sure. She looked past me toward the tree line and whispered, Then you need to see this. She led me to the edge of her property, where an old wooden fence separated her land from an empty plot. There, nailed to a tree, was another note, weather-worn, faded, almost hidden. I pulled it off and read, He wouldn't move, he wouldn't sell, so we made him disappear. No name, no signature, no clue. Who wrote it? But Vanessa said it hadn't been there a month ago, she was sure of it. And at the bottom, written in faint red ink, was a date, 069, that was 3 days from now. I looked up, slowly. The wind had picked up the chimes on her porch, rang again, because whatever was coming next, it was coming soon, and it was coming for me. Where are you watching from? Let me know.
In the comments, because in the final moment, I go back to my ranch, and what happens on June 9th will change everything. June 9th, the date circled in red ink. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew it was coming for me, whether it was a threat, a plan,
or a deadline I wasn't going to wait to find out the morning of. I prepped my land like I was expecting a siege. All cameras synced and online motion sensors tuned and tested. Phone fully charged. Generator double chi checked. Flashlights, flares, Scout, and Duke each wore GPS collars and stayed close. Joseph was staying nearby at Rick's place. Vanessa and Natalie were both on standby, ready to call. If anything seemed off, we weren't just protecting my ranch. Now we were building a wall of eyes around it. By 6 p.m. everything was quiet. Too quiet, the wind didn't even stir. The stillness wasn't peaceful. It was like the world was holding its breath. At 9:12 p.m. the first alert went off. Motion detected, north fenced line camera 4. I pulled it up on my tablet. At first it was nothing, just some movement behind the trees. Then a figure emerged, not Alan, not Tammy, someone in full black head to toe, hoodie up, gloves on. They moved with purpose, not sneaking, just bold, like they'd done this before. I zoomed in. The person was placing something on the fence post. Then they moved on to the next, and the next. That's when I realized what they were doing, marking the property, red plastic tags, reflective like surveyor flags. I had seen them before on condemned properties.
I texted Joseph instantly. Me, motion detected. Someone is marking my perimeter. Not Alan, not armed, but fast. Joseph deputies. Notified, stay inside, don't engage, let the cameras do the work. But I wasn't going to just sit there. I grabbed the flashlight,
Clipped the shotgun to my back and headed out the side door. Scout followed Duke, stayed behind, whining low. I kept low as I moved through the tall grass. The figure had just reached the back gate when I shone the light on them. Hey, you're on private. Property, they froze, then turned. Slowly the light caught their face for a second. Female, late 30s. Sharp eyes, no fear. She didn't run, she smiled and then said the words that chilled me to my core. You think Tammy was the end? I stepped forward. Who?
Are you no answer? She dropped something onto the ground, then bolted back into the trees. I ran forward but stopped when Scout barked and pulled back hard on the leash. I looked down. She had left a packet inside a flash drive and a folded letter.
The letter read, Tammy was phase 1. This land isn't yours. It's already claimed. I called Joseph. He was already en route with 2 deputies. We reviewed the footage, watched her escape route and tried to track her down, but she was gone like a ghost. That flash drive, it cracked. The whole thing open inside were files, dozens. Emails, maps, audio recordings, from what we could piece together. Tammy was just a local leader in a larger network. They called themselves Leap Land. Expansion and acquisition. Project, they weren't an HOA, they were a privately funded group that bought influence in HOAs and pushed people off their land to create unified zones for development parks, resorts, even government contracts. Tammy had been one of many. Alan was a fixer, and the woman on my fence line unknown, but her face matched a blurred figure from Vanessa's drone footage. Months ago they were organized, funded, and ruthless. The ranches marked on my map. Every one of them had been targeted by LAP for acquisition. Resistance. The homeowners who sold got payouts. Those who refused got pressured. I was just the first to expose it publicly, but I wouldn't be the last. The county took the flash drive seriously. So did the state. By July, an official task force was formed, a full investigation launched. News broke coast to coast. HOA Nightmare uncovers secret land network. My name was out there. I testified in 3 hearings. Rick, Vanessa, and Natalie joined me. Lisa, too. Alan was finally arrested in Mississippi, caught trying to board a private plane under a fake name. Tammy took a plea deal. She flipped, gave names. The web unraveled. Fast now. It's been 6 months. The ranch is quiet again. New chickens in the coop. Solar panels humming like always. Scout and Duke play in the fields like nothing ever happened. But I haven't let my guard down. The cameras are still up. The motion alerts still ping, and every night I still check the gate. Not because I'm scared, but because I know how close I came to losing everything, and I'll never let that happen again. So to anyone watching, listening, reading, if someone knocks on your door offering to buy you out, if your mail goes missing, if drones start buzzing over your garden, and if they say you don't belong, remember my story. Stand your ground, because peace, it's something you have to fight for, especially when it's yours. Where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. And if you've ever had trouble with an HOA or worse, tell your story, because if we don't speak up, they win.